on Free Speech Friday, I still prepare a show just in case you all decide to check out and not show up. I need to at least be able to do a radio show, because 4 hours of dead air and me twiddling my thumbs is probably not going to make for very exciting radio. So anything you want to talk about today is fair game. We'll get into it. A few of the things we are going to talk about if we get time, of course. I ran across a post on X, and the story is that the IRS apparently has recovered $263 million in unpaid taxes from a single tax cheat. Just one person cheating the government owes the government $263 million in unpaid taxes. And this individual apparently had been running an offshore tax evasion scheme for more than a decade, and it was discovered by the IRS whistleblower program, or at least they helped expose the scheme. And there's been a lot of discussion, especially from the IRS and from others that support the government's continued overtaxation of citizens. They're saying that, look, this is why tax funding is so important. This is why the enforcement of tax law, why funding that is so important. And I had to kind of chuckle, because it seems to me that this could be done a lot more efficiently, a lot less expensively, if we simply just simplified the tax code. If we made the tax code easier to comprehend, and we eliminated most of the loopholes that these tax cheats inevitably use as a way to cheat the tax code. So if we didn't have 87,000 pages of tax code, if the United States tax code simply said you earned $100 or you earned a gazillion dollars, you pay 10% in taxes, if that was the entirety of the tax code, there's really no cheating it. There's no write-offs. There's no tax exempt status for this, that, or the other. If you earned X amount of dollars, you pay X percent of taxes. No write-offs, no loopholes, no exemptions, none of that stuff. Because that's what they always inevitably use. They use exemptions that appear to be legitimate, and they end up going on for decades, cheating the system, because they have accountants and lawyers and things that they can pay to figure out how to hide the money from the government. And honestly, even going to a flat tax, income tax, as I've talked about at great length, even that is difficult. Because how do you determine how much money you made as a business owner, right? Right? Because if you take your expenses versus your income, and that's I shouldn't say your income, but your inflow of cash versus your outflow of cash at the end of the year, if you've brought in more than you sent out, then you've made a profit. And if you haven't brought in more than you paid out, then you've got a loss. And so even that begins to get complicated, because then you can cheat the system and say, well, I had to buy a new truck for the business because we're a plumbing company. We need a new plumbing van. And oftentimes businesses will do that sort of thing because they can simply cheat the tax code and say, well, technically I didn't make any money because I bought a whole bunch of new stuff for the company, and that was an expense for the company, so I didn't really make any income at all. And so I've said a million times, if I've said it once, we need to go to a consumption tax. And if the law was, if you spend money, you pay taxes on it, then there's no way to cheat the system. And you don't need millions and millions and billions of dollars to fund tax code enforcement, because the tax code enforcement is simply a matter of, oh, you spent $100 today? The taxes on that $100 are 10%, 15%, or whatever it is. Problem solved. So, and look, I get that it's more complicated than that, but you get the point. We spend millions and millions, and actually probably billions of dollars on tax code enforcement. And for what? The other thing that I had to laugh about this is I ran across one of the comments in the discussion, and using the numbers that we have from the current budget or the most recent budget, the United States government spends about $1 trillion every 100 days. $1 trillion every 100 days. Now that's give or take, of course. So that $263 million that they recovered funds the government for right around a half an hour. So since the time we started talking, of that $263 million, about $100 million of it has already been spent. And so what? We spent a few $100 million chasing this tax cheat down. We spent billions of dollars in agents and audit units and all sorts of other stuff within the IRS so we can recover $263 million, enough to fund the government for about a half an hour. That's not a win. You spent $1 billion to recover $250 million. That's like me walking up to you and saying, hey, that's a nice shiny quarter you have there. I'll give you $1 for it. And then if I go home to my wife and say, look, I got this cool quarter and I only paid $1 for it, my wife would throw me out of the house. I mean, not literally, but you know what I mean. Right? I mean, the level of stupid in the government at this point, for us to believe that this is some sort of a win, that they recovered $263 million in unpaid taxes. It sounds like a lot of money. And to the average American citizen, that is a massive pile of money. But in the grand scheme of things with the federal government, considering our current spending levels are over $6 trillion a year, this money that they spent a few $1 billion recovering funds the government for, like I said, a half an hour. So what are we actually doing here? I think the problem is not so much that there are people out there cheating the tax code or cheating the tax system in the United States. The problem is that the tax code is so complicated that it becomes easy to cheat. And there is an incredible incentive to cheat. So make the tax code simpler, and then the federal government maybe cuts spending by about 50%, and a lot of these problems go away. There's more to get to. We'll talk to WM. We'll talk to Glenn. It's Free Speech Friday. We'll do it all in a moment on News Radio 102.9 KRN.